All right. Welcome back to the Nomad CEO. I'm here with Dave Groves from the US. He's a leadership coach and mindset coach, a very renowned personality. I'm really honored to have him on the show. He also teaches a leadership method called SEND. I'm going to ask him in a moment what that is. But first of all, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. And I always ask my guests about their transformation because most of my guests have gone through some sort of hardship or struggle. And I'm just assuming that you have as well.
Wow. Yeah. It's great to be with you. Always a pleasure. And I, I think that, we, no matter what stage of life where you're at as a man, primarily and who I tend to work with, from a leadership coaching perspective is, we've all got a story. We've all had challenges, unless you're just, right out of school. But, live a little bit of life, a saying I like to say, and I don't even know where I heard it, but it's not the years, it's the miles, and in your case, the kilometers. It's not necessarily how old you are or how many years that you live on this earth. It's the experiences, and it's the challenges you have, and how you react to them, what you choose to do. So yeah, I mean, I've been through, just like any other guy, career changes and promotions and challenges with family and I think for me, Roman, my transformation really began, really not necessarily in a plan. I don't think anybody ever plans. It's more of how do you respond, to the things that happen in life. And so, um, for me, the big thing was just, probably trying to determine where I wanted the path of my career to go. I had a communication degree. I was working in media. Spent many years on radio and in TV production, media production, marketing, kind of the prequel days to the social media world, from a marketing promotion type place. And then I had where it really began for me was for a lot of men, and that is I went through an unexpected divorce in 2009, 2010, and so didn't see it coming. Had three small kids, and I had to decide how really to respond to it. And for a minute, I was in a bad place. It was tough, and I think that for me, I remember I was thinking about this earlier today before our call. I remember being in Las Vegas for a big event, and I was there. And I remember just being in the hotel room, and all of a sudden, it was like all the pressure of the last many months and everything that had gone on, just kind of hit me all at once. And I don't remember the last time I cried, but I just broke down, like the mental and the emotional of it all. And I remember thinking at that moment, okay, this is like a point, this is like a line in the sand. I've got to choose. Either I'm going to find a pathway to where really my destiny is and what God wants for me, or I'm going to live in this space and I'm just going to be a shell of a person. And sometimes I think for a lot of men, and I love the quote from Henry David Thoreau. He said, "The mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation." And I realized that it was up to me to find a pathway out of that, and I needed to. We have a saying here in the U.S. Pick yourself up by your bootstraps. I had to decide that, I wasn't going to let the things of life happen to me, but I had to make some things happen. So that's kind of where the path change. A couple of career changes in there, and then kind of brought me to this place where I felt like, I needed to focus on, strategy for myself, but also how can I help others and what can I do with, this leadership, this challenge that I had taken, but this leadership desire to learn, and I really became just kind of a student of leadership studies and doing a master's degree in that, but also just really focusing on how better to create within my own self, kind of a pathway for others.
Okay. Amazing. So when you went through those difficult moments, when you had your divorce, would you say that this was the moment where you realized that there was only one way to go, and that way that's up? Like, was that like the lowest point in your life, and then from there it was only going up? Yeah, when did you know that the way out is becoming a leadership coach? Did that happen right there, or did it take a while until you figured out how to overcome this rock bottom?
I wish I had the answers then. I think I realized that I was going to have to choose to every single day take the steps to empower myself and better myself. And it was so much more of a not being a victim, realizing that I think I was like, gosh, what was I, 33, 34 years old. I realized, I've got a lot ahead of me. I need to take the time to figure out the things about myself that I needed to change. But at the same time, what are those elements that are the most important to me in my own path. And then not just that, but also, and this was the thing I was going to mention that really, I actually hired a coach. I didn't even know what that was. I had a friend recommend somebody to me. She was a woman, probably my mother's age. Her name was Erin. And I remember just sitting down with her and I'm like, I don't even know what I'm doing. It wasn't therapy. It was more of like her helping me see the blind spots, her helping me see, the areas that maybe, "Hey, your personality is such. Did you realize this about yourself?" "Did you realize that, you have certain giftings and calling, that you are really just kinda keeping hemmed up and boxed up?" And so she really helped me over the course of a few months to kind of unlock that. And that's what I started thinking to myself then was, this might be something that, I could do. Because I felt like at the time, um, I was spending so much time with, different men would call me and say, "Hey, can I have coffee? Can we talk?" And I kind of felt like I wasn't being a therapist because I'm not a therapist, but it was more of like, visiting with guys, talking to them, not really necessarily giving advice, but just kind of figuring out some things. And it dawned on me one day, I'm like, hey, maybe it's something I need to consider doing, and that was, I mean, 15 years ago. And it took a long time for me to kind of find that, uh, that right way of what it is that I felt like I was the most gifted at and where my calling was. And I'd always really loved leadership studies and what makes a good leader, what is a leader. So many definitions out there, but at the same time, I realized that my my unique skill set was really more about, okay, let's unpack some things. Let's find some clarity. Let's talk about mindset because I really had a mindset shift then, and I didn't even know. From that Vegas hotel room to visiting with my coach, it was more about me kind of unpacking. Okay, wait a minute. What are the things that I didn't even realize that may become natural to me. I had often been in positions of management or leadership that I had had in jobs where I kind of rose to the attention of my bosses and was put in charge of things. And part of that was, I think, understanding, people, how to motivate people, how to best work with people, and also how to really just strategically lead a team. And I didn't even know that I knew how to do that because it was something I was learning.
Yeah. Yeah. So the clarity you brought up, which is one of the things that you teach, right? How do you get from not knowing, from being lost, which is the situation for a lot of guys? And I'm saying this because I mean, first of all, I've been there. I've been there many times where clarity is just not there because you especially when you go through a difficult situation, and often clarity is what you lack the most, right? So because you wouldn't have ended up in that place if you had clarity in the first place, right? So because it was most of it happens to be the case that we end up in those difficult moments because we've avoided, or we've gone through some, I don't know, maybe just ignorant or just bad decisions. Like it's about most of the time it's it's our own fault, right? Responsibility. We end up being in those situations, but we didn't pay attention, or we made some really terrible choices that led to those moments, right? So how do you? So if someone is listening right now, going through some problematic moment, some situation that is really challenging, how do you get to clarity? What is your method? How do you do that?
Well, and what I would say first is it, it isn't exclusive to men. I mean, I know that, you know,
No,
both men
not
and women,
exclusive.
you
Yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah,
and I
yeah.
think that you hit the nail on the head. It's often, you've made decisions or you've made, a lack of decision making. And I think that for what I went through and then what I kind of came out of that with the thought process on was, and my own coach helped me see this was, you hear a lot about blind spots. I think a lot of times we lack clarity because we aren't sometimes willing to do things that most of the time, what you need to do, you know, it's kind of like if you're battling, maybe your weight, usually, unless it's some medical situation, you usually know, well, I need to quit eating junk food and I need to probably walk. I need to drink more water, things like that. People most of the time know. Um, and for me, I didn't even know what it was that I lacked clarity. I had never even heard that phrase at the time. But what I discovered was that, you know, one of the instances where kind of I came up with this idea of scent leadership method was the S stands for you got to see clearly. Now, it sounds a little funny because you're like, well, I'm trying to get clarity. No, you need to see what specific are the areas where you're not following through. Sometimes people and men do this. We avoid situations. We avoid maybe you have the kind of personality you avoid conflict, maybe at work or whatever it may be. So you have to see what is it, and sometimes it takes somebody else, like a coach, helping you see what is that you didn't even realize what that was right here, that in your blind spot, and maybe even it's something that you repeatedly find yourself out of a almost like staying in a comfort zone in doing. And so, the first part of it is we when I talk with people and we kind of unpack some of that, it really is trying to figure out, okay, well, let's talk about what are the things that, is a challenge for you or something you're kind of avoiding. And it doesn't have to always be about your own leadership pathway. Sometimes it's little things. People say things a lot like when something goes wrong in their life, well, I made a mistake. Well, sometimes it's you made a choice. It isn't you made a mistake. Mistakes are like, when your kid does something and they spill something. I mean, well, I didn't mean, I was an accident. I think sometimes in our culture, people tend to go, "Oh, I'm sorry, I made a mistake." We see this all the time with when people do things or say things on social media, and then somebody will come back and they'll get called for it, or there'll be an outrage or whatever. And they'll go, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I made a mistake." No, you made a choice. And like I said a while ago, you usually know what you need to do. And so a lot of finding clarity is almost like putting on a pair of prescription glasses like I have and like you wear, that you're like you then can see, oh, okay, yeah, well, I knew that. I need to deal with that particular thing. So that's really the first step, is figuring out what are those things that you're refusing to either look at and deal with, or you're just needing some correction, a little bit of a corrective lens, so to speak. And then I'll go ahead and tell you that the next step is the E in scent, which is this idea of eliminating, because you're eliminating what? Eliminating distractions, eliminating the things that are maybe causing you to have a mismanagement of your time. I see this with a lot of, especially young leaders. They don't know how to effectively delegate. They struggle with having to have their hands on everything, and a lot of times, because leadership, I believe, is something that you're not born as a leader. You learn, and I think anybody can become a leader. But a lot of times, we learn a lot of the wrong ways to lead, and sometimes we learn from people that are possibly micromanagers. I had a manager years ago, a leader, and he was constantly engaged in everything, and it was really from an insecurity place, but I could have really picked that up as a young leader. So sometimes it's eliminating the distractions. It's eliminating certain behaviors that are really kind of hindering you and holding you back. And I think that's really a struggle with a lot of men, especially, is that we sometimes try to do too much because we want to be, men tend to be fixers. Let me fix it. What do I need to do to fix it? And so we end up in this place where we're always trying to just have our hands on the situation and try to make it better. And sometimes that's not what it calls for.
Yeah. Yes, and I agree. And I said men at the beginning because I only focus on men on this show. Um,
Hmm.
not because I think that women don't have problems and don't need their own encouragement and everything. It's just that I think there is a place for both, and there should be more men groups and men help for men, because we do not have the same support. um I think, especially when the shit hits the fan, is when and then a lot of young guys, a lot of men that go through this or are who are in this process of trying to become better people or entrepreneurs, or getting somewhere, being ambitious, having a vision. They feel invisible, they don't know what to do, they feel like meaningless, and so there's a lot of that going on, I think. And it is also a lot around not having clarity what to do next, right? So because it's always this game of so nobody knows me, what can I do to change that? And then it's like the chicken and the egg, right? What do you So it's often like they don't know how to get out of their shell, right? Or for example, I just had I just had a coaching call before we hopped on this one. And 21-year-old software developer. And as you just said, he already knew what he was missing, right? So he just needed this. He came on, I hired me on Fiverr for coaching, and then he basically said, "Okay, I'm a software developer. I've already developed this and this and this. I have built these apps and nice website and everything, and but I don't really know how to monetize. I don't really know how to do, and I don't really know how to I want to just make money from this, right? So I want to I don't want to work in a 9 to 5 all my life, and I feel fucking stuck, right? But he already knew what his problem was. He already knew that he didn't go out and tell people about it. Like, he didn't even have social media on his website. And so stuff like that. So easy to fix this, but sometimes what I'm trying to say here is that men need, I mean, women too, but it's just that sometimes it's almost like a therapist. Like you need to just push them into the right direction and make them accountable, right? That so that they can. It's just to reconfirm them their suspicions already,
Right.
almost like they
Yeah.
suspect already that, and then they just needed to hear from someone who has a track record, or who has had a similar situation, or has already achieved what they want to achieve, right? So it's just so yeah, and it was fun, right? So because he knew, and then he was like, yeah, I know, and then he was like super motivated, and so happy to hop on the next call, because he now he has homework, first of all, right? But so yeah, but that's a common situation. um for a lot of guys. So what are your, let's call it, what are the three biggest problems that you solve for your clients? What are the most common situations in your case?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I think, so often a lot of guys have a hard time articulating, you know, they're not necessarily going to be like, okay, I lack clarity. I feel like I'm stuck with my mindset. I mean, I think that's a rarity. Um, but a lot of the time it's, exactly what you said. I don't know where to start. Or here recently, somebody was telling me, and actually was pretty smart that he knew some of this, as he said, I feel like I'm battling imposter syndrome, or every time I start and try to motivate myself, I lose the traction. I don't know really how to keep going. I get discouraged. Um, I get so discouraged that I find myself quitting on things. And I think if I had just kept at it, but it's kind of like, for me, I see a lot of this is that, you're in this space, this safe space. A lot of people call it the comfort zone. So you're in this bubble. And I really believe that all of culture, the minute you try to get out of that and you take initiative and you're going to be, stepping out, that all of the of culture and the universe tries to push you back into it, like stay in your place. Know your spot. Don't be a disruptor. Don't try to do something different for yourself. And I think a lot of times what happens is it can vary based on generation. This is interesting too, is that, like I'm Generation X, right? More Generation X guys tend to be a little more of a hide and watch. I'm gonna do this, no matter what. But they don't have any. They're kind of like shooting in all directions. Whereas a lot of times young leaders, people that know they want to be, they want to have a career that is one that is a difference making career, which is very common with, especially with Gen Z. They get discouraged, and it is immediately what sets them back. They don't necessarily have, it's not a work ethic thing. It's more of that maybe up to that point in life, they've never really had opposition. And I think in this life, I think we're opposed constantly. I think if you're going to be anybody that does anything really just remarkable in the world, has people that are definitely opposing them, and sometimes it's the people that are your closest, right? Well, are you sure you want to do that? If you're young and you're in college, it's like, ooh, you sure you want to change your major? Why would
Yeah, they
you do that?
crabs in the barrel.
Yeah, pulling you back down. Yeah,
Yeah,
and I told somebody here recently, I said, sometimes the people that are, I kind of consider them kind of like dream killers. I wrote a quote on my Instagram that, oftentimes the people that are the dream killers are the ones that they mean well. But they don't necessarily have the drive for that dream anymore. They've lost heart, and because they've lost heart, when they see other people pursuing that, they want, they don't even mean to do it. I think it's a lot of it. They'll be like, "Oh yeah, ugh, I tried. You'll learn." And they almost treat you like a deflator of your balloon. And you talk about the young guy. I don't doubt that he's going to have people around him that will be like, "Oh." you know, because of their own being the crab in the barrel, they just look to to kind of pull you down. And I love this. There's a venture capitalist. He's a business leader named Bill Walsh, and I went to an event in the spring, and he said the most amazing thing. He pulled out his phone and he goes, "Hey, some of you need to go through your contacts and you need to delete some contacts." And everybody's like, "What?" He goes, "No, there are people in here that you just need to go, yeah, I like you, I love you, but they're basically people that are pulling you down. They're the dream killers." And he said, "There's some people you just need to delete from your contacts." And it was a room full of men. It was like 100 men there, and you could have heard a pin drop. Because it was just like, wow, like that's really. 'Cause I mean, I
Yeah.
you but I've got thousands of contacts, people I haven't talked to in years, you know, and I was
Yeah.
like, "Wow, okay." And so I think sometimes with men having stark reminders of that if you are going to have that great achievement, you've got to take a position of you've got to be willing to do things differently, you know, and that's really for me. That's what I try to do is to help. Part of helping kind of find clarity is addressing things that are either in the blind spot or maybe there's some things that you haven't dealt with that you need to deal with. And I think that for me, um, finding out what those things are is usually kind of the first few steps. And most guys I think are willing. They're most of the time willing to do the work, but they just like you said, they need somebody else to kind of reinforce what they kind of already knew.
Yeah. Yeah, it's also not that complicated. Once you understand how the mechanics of success, you know that it just comes down to the daily habits. What are you doing every day? What are you not doing? What are you avoiding? What is it that you are focusing on most of the time? And then what kind of story do you tell yourself? Like the ones you said because those are all stories, right? They tell themselves. It's all about um it's a mask or something that a bandage that you have,
Well,
and
and
then
Roman, you kind of touched on this a while ago, is that when we were talking about doing things that you need to do, is that I one of the things I love and I've loved and I consider myself a student of leadership and I believe that great leaders are ones that are always looking. You never stop growing. You're always looking to better yourself. And I love to look at what are really incredible leaders in history or even today. What do they do that makes them different? And so many little things. And a lot of times these are things that people go, "Oh, that's easy," but maybe you're not necessarily willing to do it. I think with men, it's especially when you start getting away from your teens, it's stop eating like you're a teenager. A lot of guys they're fueling their brain with a bunch of junk. They're eating unhealthy. They've gotten so busy in their career, they're not getting out and doing any kind of exercise. And that seems like, well, what's that got to do with leadership? You got to feed your brain. You got to be smart about that. And I think that's one of the things, is a lot of times guys get stuck in a rut there. If you're doing the drive-through every single day for breakfast, if you're dumping a bunch of sugar in everything you're eating, you're giving yourself really a poor start. A lot of leaders. What are other things that leaders do? Most leaders I've studied, they get up early in the morning. They don't sleep till noon. They get up early. They take time to read. They take time, a lot of men, doing some kind of a spiritual devotion, getting a clear mind for the day. And then planning what you're going to do. Don't let the day happen, but go, here are the things that I need to take care of today to get to where I need to be. And really not allowing the minutes of the day to rule you, but you manage those minutes. A
yeah,
and I think it's so critical. I think young leaders, I think you grow a lot of times growing up in our schools. I wish they had. I mean, I think in high school in the United States, and certainly in the UK in secondary school. I mean, there should be a class on leadership. There should be classes on leadership. And the thing is, that's such a
there sh-
buzzword. What does that even mean? And so explaining here's what it means. You're going to lead
should be
first.
yeah, yeah. There should be all sorts of classes that are not being taught right now. Like there's leadership, spirituality. I mean, we could argue. Okay, religion is some sort of, but um, beyond religion, spirituality, meditation is a thing that should be in every classroom. It should be in every school. Like it's really that simple. It's because it's scientifically proven that your ability to self-regulate and to pause and to be more non-reactive is gonna improve by applying these techniques. Then there's financial literacy, like that's
Absolutely.
also another one. It's not being taught. Then there is uh, I would also argue that entrepreneurship or self-development is something that should be on it's because I think it's a scam. Like universities and colleges, this is just mainly a scam. And it's becoming increasingly worse since now you can get your education. I mean, education has just become it's I mean, you can use ChatGPT 4 5 for the you can get you can teach it to be your teacher now, right? So you don't need I mean, it was already
People
easy with
don't
YouTube and
Yeah, most people don't know where to start, and I'm gonna differ with you a little bit. I'm a big proponent of education and higher education only because I know what it kinda did for me, but I had to be cognizant and choose what instead of allowing people to tell me, "Here, you need to take these classes," and I just said this to my son. He's in college the other day, and he considered changing his major, and I said, "You have to figure out not what you wanna do as a career. You don't need to go, 'Well, what would make me the most money?' Or what would my parents want me to do?" Which happens a lot. A lot of times parents push their kids into careers that their kids are not I don't want to do it, right? But it's like, well, you need to be a doctor because your father was a doctor, or you have a counselor or a guidance person that says, well, here's a really great career you might choose. Everybody's going this direction, but what I have found that is you need to find what are you best suited for. What is your passion? What's something that you would love to do every day, get up in the morning and go and do, instead of choosing for yourself an educational career path that's based on other things like what would make me the most money, what would provide the best, what would my parents be most proud of, but figuring out what really makes you come alive. And yeah, I mean, for some people, that's going to be a different pathway. You're not going to go to maybe a 4-year university, or maybe you're going to go to trade school, whatever. But you have to figure out what is it that really causes you to just have this energy. And the saying about when you figure out what your passion is, you don't work a day in your life. And I know I botched that, but you know what I'm saying is that people that find that perfect career, and sometimes it doesn't happen early in life, they they really love what they do, and then they don't feel like they're working, you know, and and I think that's really
yeah, but I mean, if you this I'm not saying that it's a scam for everyone, not saying that, but there is a case to be made for I mean, some people, yes, they know at young age, okay, I'm gonna become a doctor, and then they become a doctor, happy and super, right?
that's not
Or
everybody. Yeah,
but how many, right? So like seriously, that's not a very common thing to so most of us we don't really know. So most, especially men, I would argue that again here the differentiator, because men are usually we do not mature the same. We take for us it takes longer to mature and to often like in my case I didn't even know until I was almost 30. Like it literally it took me so long to realize that I wanted to become because in my 20 were just my fucking rock star years where I was just I was just worried about where my next party would take place, right? So that was a complete
well, and
waste
you,
of time,
and you
but it
probably
was
felt like you were
fun.
invincible, and you had all the time in the world.
Yeah, and I was doing all sorts of stupid shit like all the time, like wasting my time in parties. But okay, I mean I had fun, but in hindsight, it was not very um intelligent.
Like
so,
but like you said,
so,
you were we don't men don't mature at the same rate.
it takes us
Yeah.
yes, it takes
Yeah.
longer. But what I'm trying to say here is that maybe if if I had been taught some common sense, some a little bit more than just stupid subjects like nobody needs ever. Maybe back then someone would have taken the time and taught me some more useful stuff. I would not have lost that much time. I don't know. Maybe it's just Just a thought.
No,
Maybe.
I think you're right. You've heard that in the United States that something that was taught when my dad was a kid, in high school in the '60s was shop class and men using their hands and building things, right? Taking apart motors. My dad was like 15 years old and he was rebuilding the engine on his car. Well, I can't do that now and I'm 50. You know what I mean? Like I didn't learn that. I learned a lot from him, but obviously cars have changed and it's a whole lot different. But, I think that, that tactile doing things with your hands as a man, I think that a lot of times too is that, this can be the biggest time waster right here as a guy. And I tell guys all the time is like, stop endlessly scrolling on your smartphone. Stop going on the internet and scrolling around. You need to
Well,
change your habits.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's a whole different ball game topic, right? On top, this is. I mean, with college or all and universities, I'm just shocked how many idiots come out of these places and paid so much money for it. I mean, it's just shocking. I mean, what's going on? But that is also another discussion for another day. Uh, but there could be. I mean, to connect it back to the first to our leadership and clarity topic, there could be a lot more people coming out of these universities with more leadership skills and clarity than that are coming out right now. Not There's not many, I think. Could be a lot better, I think. Um, yeah. So for the method you use, can you repeat again? I forgot the name. Sense.
Sent.
What what does it mean?
So it's taking the acronym, and like I mentioned before, the S is seeing clearly the things
Okay.
that, so you're looking at things in a different way through a different lens. Sometimes it takes that, like you talked about with coaching and working with your young friend. It was showing him, putting a pair of glasses on him and showing him what he kind of already knew. Like you said, you
Mm-hmm.
spot it as an outsider right away. You're like, well, where's your social media? Where's your promotion? Um,
Yes.
and and so seeing it, and then the E is about eliminating. What are the things you need to eliminate? What are the time
Okay.
wasters?
Yeah. You said that already. I didn't pay attention.
Yeah,
Apparently,
yeah.
yes. Yeah.
I
Yes.
think I think the next two, N and T, I think for me, are really where a lot of guys struggle, and they aren't necessarily because of they've done something wrong, or they just haven't learned. And I think that is what's key, and that is is to find what are the needs. So ends is about finding the needs that what okay, where do you lack? Where's the training that you lack? Sometimes you need to, and this happened a lot during COVID, right? People quit their jobs or they just went back to school. They went online. They figured out, hey, what don't I know? And so it's what are the needs that you have that where you're deficient in? What are the things that you didn't, like you said, you didn't really learn proper financial management. We have all kinds of entrepreneurs and people that want to have their own business. They love the idea of working with people and having customers. Maybe they got something specific they love to create, but they don't know the first thing how to manage their own personal finances because, again, not something you get in secondary school. They don't know anything about that. They don't know how to budget. They don't know how to handle that. So you got to figure out what are the needs. What are the things that we're kind of marching ourselves through this concept, and then once you know that and you've kind of taken these steps, then the T is kind of a, a leadership. For me, it's kind of like a crucible moment. It's like, okay, now we take the territory. Now we're going to enact what we've learned. We're going to take the mountain. We're going to take the territory. And what does that look like? You know, I think a lot of times it's putting people around us, again, deleting contacts maybe. I've a proponent. I have a coach. I think having someone that I bounce ideas off of, somebody that is kind of like a non biased outsider that can go, okay, and this is kind of like the 101 of coaching is you ask a lot of questions, right? And so having someone ask you questions and questions and questions to get you to go, oh, I didn't see it that way. And I think that having somebody like a coach, I think that, as a young leader, you need a lot of different people in your life. And one of those is somebody that can be honest with you. I think a lot of times in that going back to an elimination, sometimes you got to eliminate some close people in your circle that are those crabs in the bucket. Sometimes you've got friends that are, they're not necessarily building you up. They're not giving you adding value. They're not the people that can be honest to you. You think of all the rock stars over the years that have died, right? And had a circle of people around them that were afraid to tell them, "Hey, you're going down a path here. This could end badly," right? I heard that years ago about Elvis Presley. Is that everybody around Elvis was a yes man and wanted to be in the entourage, but nobody would go, "Hey, I think that you've got a destructive behavior path here, and it's going to end."
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to get, well, if I tell him the truth, he's not going to let me hang out with him. And I want to be in the circle. I want to be in the entourage. You need people in your friend group. And you and I talked about this the other day, is the older men get, usually the smaller that circle gets, you know?
Yes, and it tends to be the opposite for women, right?
It does.
And, women have like these social networks that get larger as they age, whereas men have shrinking circles. Like, and I am totally part of that. I mean, they were self-imposed. In my case, because I left. I moved to a different country, totally foreign to my. I mean, I didn't know anyone here, and now it's quite difficult to. But yeah, this is how I connect here, like the podcasting, and some friends I still have, of course, but men, yes, I can. The older we get, the less we have. There's plenty of men who don't have any friends, or men who can count their friends on one hand.
Sure. Yeah. And I think that that's where one of the questions we talk about is, where's your intentionality there? A lot of times, though I think one of the reasons why that friend group shrinks is guys get hyper focused on what they feel like it is that they are trying to accomplish. And, a lot of times friendships tend to be, they seen as maybe a time waster or a distraction.
Well, they
Um,
can. They
yeah.
can actually. Yes, and women too. You can have if if you might make more progress alone, isolated in a certain like becoming an entrepreneur. It might actually be a better idea to be alone or let's call it on your own,
Right.
so that you can so that you can focus on all of those little habits you need to get done every day. um as this can be actually much more productive than having a couple or a girlfriend. I mean, not necessarily. I'm not saying that this is true for all couples. It can be also the opposite. I guess it can also be an empowering situation where you have a partnership that actually where your woman is actually helping you achieve your goals, stands behind you and backs you up. But that's actually something I would argue. I mean, I don't want to be too much red pilled here, but I think it's actually also getting increasingly rare I don't know. Um, what do you think?
Yeah. I mean, really, wow. Yeah. I know some really great therapists too that deal in the relationship world. We don't spend a lot of time in that relationship
It
coaching
can.
space. But you're 100% right. It takes the people around you, and certainly, a girlfriend, boyfriend, spouse, whatever. You're sure you're correct. And I think for men, a lot of times we we isolate more easily. Women are much more of a social being than a man. It comes natural. But I think that, so let me I want to do this. Let me I always like to take and say, okay, well, what do I take away from this? Right. So if there's guys that are listening, they're like, okay, I've heard all this. What can I do right now? Like, what are some things I could do today? I get off, I turn off this podcast. I've gotten to work. I've been commuting, whatever. What are three things that I can do that, are just action steps? Maybe going to consider looking into, getting yourself a coach, um, or changing kind of some habits. But what are three things that you can do right now? I think the first thing is you got to manage your time. Number one, you got get your phone calendar, whatever it is, become a better time manager. Stop letting stop letting the clock and your time manage you. Get real consistent with that. Um, Number two, you got to learn to. It's a very simple word, but you got to learn how to say no to what you need to say no to. I fell into this trap for a long time, Roma, where I, I, oh yeah, I can help with that, or oh sure, I'd love to do that. Um, and sometimes you got to say no and go. You got to protect. You got to learn how to protect that a little bit. And as a leader, because delegation is so important, and strategically building a team is so important, you got to learn to say no to certain things and what you need to say yes to. And then a third one, excuse me. And this is something that most guys are like, "What are you talking about?" It's a habit of practicing gratitude.
Yeah,
Grat
big one.
So what's that look like for you? And, I'm saying to talking to our leaders out there, what does that look like? It is when you wake up in the morning realizing, okay, I'm breathing, I got another day at this. How am I going to add value to the people around me? How am I going to be that person that emulates what it is to be thankful? And it sounds kind of elementary, like, oh, well, practice gratitude. And it affects so much of your life, and, you go to the market, um, part of practicing gratitude is how you treat other people, and, thanking the people that are helping you through your day. And I think that because I do believe that there really are two kinds of people in this world, only two, and it's people that are positive and people that are negative. Um,
Yeah,
the positive is such a conscious choice because our culture, our world, everything it will go to the negative without you don't have to grab the steering wheel, you know? But and I'm not like this overly crazy positive, ignoring the things that are in front of me and just being like, oh, I'm Roman, I'm so positive. I'm just going to have a happy day. But you have to choose it, and you got to change your mind's makeup when it comes to that.
yeah, I agree. Um, I mean, there is nuances, and it's not black and white, always negative, always positive. But you're right. I mean, there's people that are mostly negative, and other people are most of the time they're positive. And so yeah, um, the positivity and the negativity is also just self-talk, right? So often it's how you address yourself from the very beginning when you use when you wake up, and because this gratitude is a thing that you can do internally. Like you can be grateful for the things, that the simple stuff, that I don't know, sun comes up and you have a beautiful garden, you sit down, have some meditation, and then you're grateful for that. And then you can also go out and be just a grateful person to the people around you, and be a decent and kind human being, which is also fostering more gratitude. And so that's a good it's
What changes you? It helps you be positive. And like you said, the
yeah.
self-talk, you know, for years, I always felt like you'd see books, right? It'd be like how to talk your way to happiness or this. And people are like, that's crazy. You talk to yourself in the
Happiness is
mirror.
different.
Yeah. It's different.
Happiness is not something you can practice. You can only practice gratitude, and then hopefully you're gonna have more happy feelings. But it's
Yeah.
something that
Well, it's an
doesn't
emotion,
really.
right? You know, the pathway you're trying to get to is this place of joy. I think the self-talk is sometimes reminding yourself. A coach told me this years ago and I stole it. I love it. Is he said, when you start something, write yourself a letter of your future self and write a letter to yourself of why you started this. What was your dreams? What was your goals? And then put it away. And then maybe in a week, a year, 5 years, when you're having that, why am I doing this? Looking in the mirror, Roman, you can't do this, man. Whatever. You go get that letter and open it up, and it's like somebody else wrote it to you because that was a different person. That was you then,
Yes.
that person telling you, Roman future self, going, okay, look, you're probably reading this today and you're really discouraged. I don't know what's happened to us, but let me tell you why we started this. We started this because we wanted to have more time with our kids. We wanted financial freedom. We wanted to help people, or we had a vision of an invention, and we believe that we can do da 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 da. And yeah, I mean, it works. It really does,
It,
because you
it,
you end up in a situation where you forget that, right? You forget
yeah.
what you felt and what you thought back then, and it's almost like a time capsule, right? A letter to your future self. So, um, you know
It's so funny you bring that up. You brought that up because I have this guy that I have coached before we hopped on the podcast. I said the exact same thing to him. I said, "You are not the same person that's starting today. This is not the same person that you are gonna be in a year from now. You're
Mhm.
gonna be a very different person." And one of the things that I gave him as a homework, as task, is that I want you to write a profile of yourself, of that successful new business owner and software developer, and I want you to write that profile from that future self, and then look back to your now. And so this is very powerful stuff because it's an identity shift,
It is.
right? You become a different person. So yeah, powerful
Well,
stuff.
because it impacts your mindset, right? Your mindset's
Yeah,
different. You're at a place where maybe you need to be reminded, and what better way to be reminded is your past self saying,
yeah,
"Hey,
and
we were
all
back
that.
here," um, and it does impact the mindset. The leadership expert John Maxwell, he's been out there forever. He said he studied hundreds of leaders, and there really is only one thing that separated the successful ones from the unsuccessful. One or the other. And I remember being in an event and he said this. He goes, "It's mindset. That's the only thing." Guys that are really successful leaders, they are not allowing things to happen to them. They're choosing how they're going to set their thoughts, their habits, everything into place, and then they're going to hold it accountable to that. And like we said earlier, when it comes to coaching men, is most don't understand any of those buzzwords, right? They don't even know what is imposter syndrome, or I mean, it's very rare. It's usually like, I don't know what to do, and it's a lot of unpacking of things, and finding the things that they're, usually you can uncover that. Oh, what did you realize you're doing this? The blind spots and things like that.
Yeah. All right. Um, Great talk, Dave. Um, do you want to shout out to the the audience? How can they reach out to you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Instagram's the first place. You can find me on Instagram. It's just at the Dave Groves, and so that's spelled last name spelled Groves. Um, so at the Dave Groves, you can find me on Instagram. You can find me on TikTok, same handle. You can also go to my website, which is thedavegroves.com, and then I'm also on LinkedIn, and happy to connect. If you heard this today and something sparked something, or you have any feedback, I'd love to hear that always. And if you didn't enjoy the time, just don't tell Roman. Don't send him any messages. For sure.
Okay. All right. Amazing. Thank you so much, Dave. Have a great life. Take care, and hopefully talk soon
Yeah,
again.
that's great. All right. Thank you, Roman. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye bye.